President Obama has spoken about Social Security in the past and agreeing with Republicans after he gets reelected, if he does. And he says, don't worry, quote, I believe that if we're successful in this election, when we're successful in this election, that the fever may break because there's a tradition in the Republican Party of a more common sense than that. So basically, this setting up the grand bargain. After I win, again, if he wins, what we're going to do is we're going to do this grand bargain where I'm going to cut entitlement reform. In fact, we showed it to you earlier in the week. President Obama said on 60 Minutes that he would do entitlement reform. Now, when they talk about reforming, quote-unquote, entitlements, Social Security and Medicare, they don't mean adding to it. They mean cutting it. That is obvious. No one can think otherwise. So President Obama is saying, I can't wait to work with the Republicans. And yes, we will reform entitlements, right? Well, Bernie Sanders, one of the few progressives in the Senate, says, this grand bargain's coming. Quote, that's exactly what's going to happen unless someone of us stops it, and a number of us are working very hard on this. That's exactly what will happen, referring to the grand bargain in cutting Social Security and Medicare. He says, everything being equal, unless we stop it, what will happen is that there will be a quote-unquote grand bargain after the election in which the White House, some Democrats will sit down with the Republicans, and they will move to a chained CPI. Now, you might not know what a chained CPI is, but that's really important. That's the Consumer Price Index, and it is lower than the cost of living adjustments that they make now for Social Security. What does that mean? It means they're cutting your Social Security. That's part of the grand bargain. And here's Bernie Sanders saying, red flag, they're going to cut Social Security. Watch out. But nobody's watching out. They're like, Obama, yes, he's a progressive, absolutely. He's going to protect us from the cuts that goddamn Romney and Ryan would do to Social Security and Medicare. Well, yes, they would do the cuts, but apparently so would President Obama. So Huffington Post, by the way, reports on negotiations where he already offered this. Quote, when the President and Speaker John Boehner attempted to craft a deal on debt ceiling last summer, Obama offered the chained CPI, Consumer Price Index, as a concession. He already offered it. Bernie Sanders continues, I think we're going to make sure that we reduce the wiggle room for the president, and he has got to make a very simple statement. If reelected, I will not cut Social Security. So is he going to make that statement? Nope. Now, look, if you weren't going to cut Social Security, wouldn't it be the easiest thing in the world? Just say, well, I'm not going to cut Social Security. Goddamn Romney and Ryan are. I'm going to protect you. It's a position that 84% of Americans agree with, saying that no matter what, you should not cut Social Security. Even if the deficit is in trouble and you need to balance the budget, still 84% of the country says, hell no. Easiest position in the world to take, right? When they asked David Axelrod about it, he says, the approach has to be a balanced one. Meaning, yeah, we might have to raise taxes on the rich, which I don't believe them, but okay, that's what they say. But on the other hand, of course, we'd have to cut the entitlements, right? Well, Mark Halperin asked him about that, and he said, quote, Mark, I'll tell you what, when you get elected to the United States Senate and sit at that table, this is not the time. Think about why he's saying this is not the time to talk about that. First of all, what do you mean? He's a reporter. Why does he have to be a senator to ask you a question? It's a rare good question Mark Halperin asked. Terrific, right? So, and the reason Axelrod does want to answer that incredibly simple question is he says, Mark, this is not the time. Because right now we're trying to pretend to be progressive. We're pretending that we're going to protect Social Security and Medicare. Now, after the election, that would be the time to cut it. You see? It's very inconvenient to ask that question because now's the time where we're trying to screw people by pretending we're progressives. You know that the average guy who's retired and gets Social Security, it's a little over $1,200 a month. How much are you going to cut him? I mean, they're having debates about whether to increase tax on the rich or decrease taxes. Do you know that they're thinking of lowering the top bracket? Do you know that President Obama has already said if reelected, he will lower the corporate tax rate from 35% to 28%? He says, oh, I'll try to take away some exemptions. Yeah. Which ones? Hasn't said it. He's just as vague as Mitt Romney on that. Okay? So as they're lowering corporate taxes, how are you going to pay for it? You're going to take it from a guy who's getting $1,200 a month? Now, why do you think I'm mad about that? Why do you think I'm fighting about it? And by the way, all the forces are aligned against this. President Bill Clinton asked about this. He said, quote, I think the lame duck session, they will avoid the fiscal cliff. Either they'll make a deal or they'll have a short extension. You know what that means? Lame duck session, grand bargain. He knows it. He talks to Republicans. He talks to Democrats. I'll get to Republicans in a second. One more from Clinton. I predict you will get a budget deal early next year, if not in the lame duck session, and I think you're going to start to see them work together. It's going to be a different world. The fix is in, guys. They've already decided. Look, I can cite your Republicans. John McCain, Kelly Ayotte, Lindsey Graham. These are the three stooges that represent the defense contractors. Now, in order to avoid the fiscal cliff, they want to do a deal, right? Part of that stupid fiscal cliff, which is so hyped up, is that they would actually cut defense. Those guys who are the stooges of the defense contractor, they're not going to have you cut defense. In fact, in their letter, they say, quote, sequestration, that's where you cut defense, will endanger the lives of America's service members, threaten our national security, and impact vital domestic programs and services. In other words, don't cut defense. Don't cut the defense contractors. We love those guys. We're their crony capitalists. We're their politicians. We're the guys they bribed. So what do they say about this balanced approach? Quote, based on this, we are committed to working together to help forge a balanced bipartisan deficit reduction package to avoid damage to our national security and important domestic priorities and our economy. In other words, the fix is in. They're going to do the grand bargain. They will do a fig leaf tax increase on the rich, and watch the numbers, because I don't believe it will actually be a tax increase. There's an excellent chance it'll actually be a tax cut. And on the corporate side, we already know it's going to be a tax cut. And they're going to take it from the middle class. They're going to take it from you. In fact, here's the nail in the coffin. The guy who apparently is also signed on to this grand bargain, David Koch of Koch Industries. Quote, I think it's essential to be able to achieve spending reductions, and maybe it's going to require some tax increases. If David Koch is talking about tax increases, that means the die is cast. We're going to pretend to increase taxes, and maybe we'll even raise them by a tiny, tiny amount. But the overwhelming majority of the money, we're going to take from the middle class. We're going to take it from Social Security, Medicare, and all the programs that help you. Koch agrees, Clinton agrees, the Republicans agree, Democrats agree. No matter who you vote for, they're going to rob you after the election. That's the reality. Quote me on it. And even if you're annoyed at me right now, if you're Obama supporter, oh, no, I can't believe you said that, Obama, right before an election. I'll see you after the election. I believe he's going to win. And after he wins, he's going to do this grand bargain that does exactly what I just told you. See what happens.